So the Kim K effect.
Yeah.
11 grand.
11 grand, yeah.
Nice sale on top of everything else.
Yeah. Not a bother.
Very good.
Petty cash, darling.
To her anyway.
The Architects of Business with EY Entrepreneur of the Year, telling the inspirational stories behind Ireland's most successful entrepreneurs.
Hello and welcome to the Architects of Business, made in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year, where you will hear the inspirational stories of some of Ireland's most successful entrepreneurs. I'm Sonya Lennon, broadcasting remotely from my home at this time. And on this week's show, I chat with husband and wife team Dan and Linda Kiely, who recently exited their Cork-based business VoxPro for in excess of €100 million. They talk to me about closing the big deal and how Kim Kardashian has brought her influence to bear on their portfolio. If you haven't already done so, click the link to get new shows directly into your feed. Dan and Linda Kiely from VoxPro, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I say Dan and Linda Kiely from VoxPro, but that isn't entirely true because the span of your empire is increasing on a daily basis. And the story of you and VoxPro is an extraordinary one. You are truly inspirational. And we talk all the time about inspirational entrepreneurs. Your story is compelling. It is full of mystery and amazing stories. Guys, I'm going to ask you because I ask everybody, and Linda, I'm going to come to you first. Entrepreneurs are born and fostered. Where did this come from? Where did this entrepreneurial spark come from?
Probably my aunt. You know, she was a great lady. She worked till she was 75. She ran her own fruit and veg wholesale. And her husband died at 47, and nobody of her generation would ever have been expected to work at all. So if I looked to anybody, I'd look at her. She went to town every day till she was 95, even though she couldn't see. She was so good.
Something tells me, Linda, you'll be doing exactly the same thing. And did you work with your aunt?
Yeah, after school, like we'd go up and fill potatoes, and she'd give you 2 and 6 it was in the day. And we'd go all the way down the North Main Street until we had it spent, you know, so like we didn't get home. Nobody ever worried whether we turn up or not, you know. Times were a lot probably harder and easier, you know.
Yeah. And what do you think that gave you then? That for presumably that was at a very early age.
Yeah. The ability to see that a woman could make it, I'd say.
Wow, isn't that extraordinary?
Yeah.
So if your aunt had been your uncle, it might have been a different story.
He was a bit of a... He had a timely heart attack.
We won't say anything about that. We'll leave him to rest in peace. Dan, what about you? What was the sort of the nudge into entrepreneurship?
You know, like kind of strange story. When I went to Colostre as a kid, and I remember there was this woman who was selling scones over the back of her backyard wall to the students, and I just thought that was such a cool idea for a woman a housewife to be making money from selling scones, and that kind of flicked a switch in my head and said, you know, I mean, like I really want to do something and work for myself, you know. So
and what age would that have been at then?
I was only maybe 12, 13.
Wow.
So when I saw her entrepreneurial spirit, I thought that was amazing just to see somebody doing that from her backyard was kind of inspirational to me.
It's lovely that both of you were inspired very early by female entrepreneurs. And Dan, after school then, what was the early career journey?
So after school, I went to it was known as the CIT, and it's not as it's known now. It was I think it was a technical college. It was called back in the day. So I went there and did business studies, which, by the way, the only thing that I learned of after spending 3 years there, was how to read a balance sheet. That was it. 3 years to learn that. And so,
Well,
yeah.
good to know though, right?
It's good to know.
So that was really about the sum total of, what academia brought to me. So I went from there, and then, like, I'd always worked. So I had my first job when I think I was 13, 14, collecting trolleys in a supermarket in Cork, and then I went from there to collecting glasses in a bar, and worked in bars during the entire time that I was in school, and when I was in going to college as well. So like the work ethic was always, I don't know, my parents were very hardworking as well. Both my mum and dad worked, and so I got that from them. And from there, then I walked into the offices of the Cork Examiner, and out walked this amazingly charismatic Amazonian, beautiful woman, and she asked me, was I here for the interview? And I
The
said,
happy tablets.
and I knew when I saw her on that particular day that I was going to marry her. So, and I was
Wow.
20, I think I was 23, or 22 or 23, I can't remember which now at this point in time. So, needless to say, I got the job. I don't think Linda would have picked me if she had had the final choice, but because
You're right.
wasn't it wasn't a reciprocated feeling at that back in the day. So we went on and worked on a magazine called Cork Scene, which was really like the Hello magazine of its day, in terms of, it was all about, events, the who's who in Cork, what's happening in Cork, and it was really very, very, like, innovative of its time. It was just probably, too early in terms of its inception, but it was amazing to fun to work with, and we had the most amazing time. Spent, I think, 3 years together, and we fell in love in the process. So, but also, most importantly, well, not most importantly, falling in love was the most important thing. But we both discovered that we really wanted to do something for ourselves. And
So Cork Scene wasn't yours. You
No.
were seconded into it.
we were working with the Examiner owned Cork Scene, and we were actually working for them. So, and then we figured out that we wanted to do something together, which was, that's where the journey began.
And Linda, was it always publishing that you were involved with, or was there anything before that?
I have a totally different story now, Sonya. I had 2 children at my 21st. And so I was early off the trap, out of the traps. So I met my
Wow.
first husband when I was 13. And I had a son and a daughter by the time I was 18. So I remember going back to my father, and I said, well, I'll go back now and do that law degree. And he said, you can go. And so I said, and right back at you. And I went away and did marketing by night. So I was
Wow.
driven, very driven.
That's
So I
extraordinary.
worked and ran 3 pubs. My brother-in-law was the investor with the then state solicitor. So I went from going in for 2 or 3 hours to hiring, firing, and I learned more actually in that role than I did anywhere in my life. We were opposite 2 hospitals. There were people escaping every day, babies coming. We knew if somebody had cancer before the person did. It was really like a high,
Wow.
and the poor people that would come in from the blind home down the road would be in and out. It taught me everything. I'd say I know that people were lonely, what an alcoholic was, things I'd never have picked up in an
So
ordinary.
you both had this kind of grounding in hospitality and publishing, and it's funny because anybody who I talk to who has had that kind of foothold in hospitality, you really get to understand
You do.
psychology, I suppose, more than anything
Mm.
else.
More than anything you could ever learn.
So
just
so
look at the
you
stats.
come together as this kind of already extraordinary backstory. Dan displaying all the true tenacity and persistence of an entrepreneur to bag his fabulous wife, and now you're sort of imbued with this spirit that you want to do something. Like, how do you filter that desire into a business at that point?
I don't think that you kind of preempt it like by having such a major plan. The opportunity arose to buy the business, and I remortgaged my house when it was 18%.
Mm.
So we were ready. I'd already done 2 other startups with other people that failed. So, like, I've been through so many recessions, I could write the book, I'd say, you know.
So VoxPro was an existing company that you bought.
Yeah, it was a paging company. A paging company, the old paging company called Pageboy, which was a great lifestyle, great service that was provided for since 1973.
Yeah.
So that
And
was
did
when
you
you had a
know when
life.
you, yeah. Did you know when you bought it that it
Mm.
was going to have to completely repurpose itself?
Totally.
Certainly. Mm.
So what was the vision around that then, Dan?
Well, it was like I was running Pageboy in Munster for about a year before we actually bought it, and like I was very frustrated about, I mean, what I couldn't do with it, because I was obviously reporting into somebody who had a different vision for than and it was all about his vision. But I really believed that if I was in, like, if I owned the business, that I could take it to the next level. And the next level was for me was to pivot into text messaging, SMS messaging, and bureau type call answering services, which the previous owner wouldn't have been open to. So he and I did a deal to buy the business, and Linda, who's the real entrepreneur when you think about it. I mean, she was the one with the asset in terms of she remortgaged her family home, and that takes balls. And particularly when with the rates of the mortgage rates at 80%, as she said. So she was the one who took all the risk, and I was the one with the idea, and thankfully she backed me. And we
But
did.
I suppose, to be fair, it's that marriage, not just your legal marriage, but that marriage of the investment and the vision and the ability to act on it. You kind of can't have one without the other, I suppose, Linda.
Not really. Not really. I think that, in the early days, it was a great little company. It was up over Clancy's in Marlboro Street. You probably know the pub well from coming to Cork, but, paging was brilliant. You weren't as accessible either. You just took the message and made the call back. So we were mostly emergency services, doctors, the sole trader, who didn't have a back office. It was great, great fun.
So it was really the first mobile comms that was out there.
For sure. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was like, believe it or not, when like it was cutting edge technology in terms of, I mean, it was the thing to have a pager back in the day. And I think the amount of time now I spend on social media and in the present day, God, the freedom of just having a pager and then getting a message and saying, I'll contact that person when I'm ready, which is just constantly kind of on devices now. It's just what the world has changed. It's just been incredible,
That was a scheduled ping there to show that we're all on social media, right? We organized that one especially. And so tell me, because okay, you start with 6 people, and I'm sure you started with 2 people before you started with 6. Oh no, because you bought it, so it started with 6 people. So you've 6 people above a pub, and in the blink of an eye, you're turning over in excess of 90 million euro a year. So how clear was the vision? Because that just doesn't happen on its own.
It doesn't. And you know what? Like, if someone had, like, I remember when we were doing 20 grand a month, right? Which was like, I thought that was a fortune back in the day, and we thought that was the definition of a successful business, and we were profitable. And then if someone had said to me that you're going to when you leave VoxPro have revenues in excess of 225 million, I would have laughed. So that's just not possible. But so going from 21 grand a month to a quarter of a billion it was just an extraordinary journey, that I wouldn't have been, quite honestly, if someone had said to me, I would have laughed.
So Linda, I'm going to ask you, how did you do it? How did you make the business so successful?
Well, you're only as good as your team, as you know. But I can certainly assure you, Sonia, it was a white knuckle ride. There was nothing easy about this. Like, every time something went wrong, the banks withdrew our credit, and there were so many different aspects that went on in the world between the builders running away and properties, and it was the normal person paid for it, that had big staff, and so we had our backs to the wall so often it was quite frightening. So I was good at kind of solving problems.
Absolutely. So I have to say, right, look, Linda is like, if there's a crisis, you need Linda in your life, because she's a solution-driven lady, and we had so many white knuckle rides, as Linda said, and we were almost fell off a cliff 3 times, and each time we were close to the edge of the cliff, Linda came up with the solution. So she's very, very.
So what were those times? Because in my experience, I don't know, there's a great phrase that was used by Ben Horowitz, the US investor Ben Horowitz, and I'm not sure how detailed I can explain it, but it's called a WIFIO. Have you heard of this?
No.
So it stands for "We're bleeped, it's over," and he says that every business has at least 3 WIFIOs in its lifetime, and that each WIFIO, when it comes, is worse than the previous one, easier to handle, and the stakes are higher. So you get sort of slightly used to this idea of crisis point, and you're almost more ready for it as they come. Was that your experience, Linda?
We're never quite ready for it, honey. It's shocking. I say, game face on for work and sleepless nights and trying to resolve cash flows.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Because one of the times I think we had 600 people out in the call center, and they were just quite willing to put them on the dole, for the sake of extending the peaks and valleys, cash flow as well.
Yeah. So Dan, what was the I suppose, what was the key inflection point, or were there a few key inflection points for the business where things just took a massive leap forward for you?
Yeah, without doubt, the biggest inflection point came when we won Google as a customer back in 2000 and 2008. That was a game changer, because like we pivoted from just SMEs in Ireland into specializing in tech and focus on FDI. So Google was definitely a game changer. We started off with a team of 12 people in 2008, which quickly went to 360 people over the space of 11 months. And that was the catalyst for us to set up operations in San Francisco. We opened an office there, a sales and marketing office there, and we had a major calling card that we could talk to the tech companies in Silicon Valley that Google was our client, and so that was definitely a huge game changer. If it wasn't for pivoting into dealing with tech companies and FDI, we would have been still dealing with SMEs in Ireland. Actually, that wouldn't have been a sustainable model anyway. We would have gone out of business.
Yeah.
But Google was a game changer for sure.
And Linda, can you just explain, because you're not a consumer facing business.
No.
So just for our listeners, maybe explain the services that VoxPro sold into Google.
Well, funnily enough, one of the guys had a pager, and I had always got great service from us. So that was a plus. So we went into Google Enterprises, AdWords, all different, and they all have a different sharehold minding them. So like, you have to perform at each level to get the next contract.
But you're basically a customer service
for sure
platform.
For sure.
And that, like, that encompasses everything from, we started off just, doing tech support for Google G Suite, and that quickly pivoted into trust and safety, content moderation, inside sales. So we literally just built up our service offering over a period of time. But Google was the one that we were able to kind of expand our service portfolio with big time.
Excellent. And so presumably then when you enter a new territory, there are challenges wrapped up in that and a new way of working, Linda.
That's true. Like, it's all about building the relationship, Sonya.
Yeah.
You know, Dan and I went over to San Fran, I suppose, every 4 to 5 weeks, and Monday back on Friday. That's hard going. They're hard going as well. But it takes about 3 years to get a contract. You know, they just don't rock in like. So people that have expectation of it being easy, like, would want to, you know, just put the thought.
None of it's easy, right?
Oh,
if it was easy, we'd all be doing it.
Exactly. And you're socializing then 4 nights a week. Like, when they come over, you'd be absolutely shattered. You know.
But I believe that the EY Entrepreneur of the Year event actually played a pivotal role in a key relationship for you, Dan. Is that right?
That's like to Linda's point there is no such thing as an overnight success. And if you think like a company like Stripe, who we're working with, we have 380 people in Cork that are supporting Stripe across the globe. So that contract started off, I met Patrick Collison at an event in Palo Alto in California, and went up and myself and it went from there. And during the Entrepreneur of the Year Awards, we had just started a small pilot with Stripe in Cork, and I met at the drinks reception beforehand. I shared a glass of bubbly with John Collison actually, and we briefly discussed the pilot. Now that certainly didn't hurt our chances of expanding that pilot.
Who paid for the champagne, Dan?
EY.
You know, something like that could put them on the cap table. You have to be very careful.
Well, yeah. Look, and also, by the way, it was the champagne helped build from 6 to 380. So thank you, EY, for the champagne.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So you are a husband and wife team. I mean, and you are obviously completely consolidated as humans and as business people. That must bring its own challenges, Linda.
To say the least. It's very difficult, actually. But, you know, at the start, we were, I suppose, driven together. But the more diluted and bigger the company gets, the more opinions that are more valuable than, say, us staying as tight. But we worked around it, you know. He hired them, I fired them.
Is that the way it was, Dan?
I don't think there's any upside of me disagreeing with that. So I'm going to just kind of like abstain. But one of the things that has been Linda, as I said to you before, is really brave and takes very brave decisions. But like, she for a long time was the sole female on our board, which I have no doubt, when I look back, and it was a really difficult place to be when you have got, you know, predominantly men, and you know, and like, one of the best decisions we ever made was to appoint 2 more women to the board, and that has been one of the catalysts of our success. So Louise Phelan was our first appointee, and then Sonya Flynn from ex PayPal, and then Sonya Flynn from ex Google, ex Facebook, came on board, and it literally was transformative in terms of the way the company scaled and grew, because we had much more diversity and on the, no question about that. And I would urge anyone who's in business today to look at the boards and see look at the data and see how successful companies are and become when they have, you know, I mean, diversity on the board and on the leadership team and on the boards. So one of the things for me post VoxPro is I'm very passionate about, you know, I describe myself as a very proud Irish feminist. I think that, you know, fostering female entrepreneurs is something that I really want to want to work with into the future.
Dan,
Okay.
always great to hear a man who understands the power of diversity in an organization, not just for the culture and the good of the company, but for the bottom line. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to hear the amazing story of VoxPro's sale. Dan and Linda Kiely, thank you so much for staying with us. Dan, you, through your vision, and Linda, through her investment, have created this entity, VoxPro, that is thriving. It's moved from 6 people above a pub to become a major international business. At this stage, you become, dare I say, irresistible to investment.
Yeah, look, it's been an interesting journey because look, we got to revenues of close to 100 million without taking any investment in. I don't know how we achieved that. I think if I was to put it into one kind of I would say through Linda's tenacity. She always had this thing not to give away equity, and she had that mantra throughout our business journey. So we got to revenues of 100 million without investment, and it was it was a really, really difficult thing to do. But at the same time, when it came to exit, we were the sole shareholders in the company, which is a great place to be.
It's an extraordinary place to be. It's extremely rare, right?
Yeah. And would I advise it? Again, probably not. I mean, because the amount of risk you take and the amount of personal sacrifices you have to make. Like, for instance, Linda had to cash in her pension at one point in time when there was zero credit available to purchase a global phone system, right, in the cloud. And that, one of my friends said to me, that's a step too far. You're really gone too far now when you're actually taking her pension. But she insisted on taking it rather than taking investment in. So,
but Linda, you must have truly believed in the vision at that point to make a decision like that.
Yeah, we'd had so many glitches, Sonya, that, like, I remember we were waiting to be wound up, and they were trying to get me to give 20% sharehold to a guy who'd been very well paid. And I said, sure, if it's worth nothing, why give it? So I held tough, and I remembered something actually that I learned in the pubs, that if you're running into any cash flow difficulties, if you flag with the revenue early enough, and we'd never ever defaulted, that they were exceptional. So they put the glitch in our cash flow over 9 months. We paid until that month came. And I'd always give a shout out to them because, everybody's afraid of them, but if you communicate, you do very well.
That's amazing.
yeah,
Amazing. So
that was how we held it.
By communication, really, that
Yes,
you're willing
we do.
to stand up and be counted. Yeah.
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 We made all
So
this through communication, I'd say.
that's interesting.
That's what we do. Like, we're good at building relationships and looking after them.
That's all business comes down to that, I suppose.
No question about it. If someone has to ask me what is the key to success in business, in my top 3 for sure would be relationships, because the old kind of adage, people buy from people, and that is one of the things we really worked hard on. And on my on our VoxPro journey, our partners or our customers, if you like, have become really good friends. So we're friends with a lot of our customers to this day, and we would see a lot of them socially, and especially now that we're not operationally involved in the business anymore. So relationships are critical to any business for sure.
So tell us about Telus.
Yeah.
So Linda and I met the CEO of Telus back in March 2010. So he
and Telus Industries are who?
It's Telus International.
Telus International, excuse me.
Yeah. They were in the same business as us, and they just won a Google contract. And a guy called Peter Scotchamara out in Silicon Valley said, if you want to see what good looks like from a customer experience and tech support point of view, you've got to go and meet this couple in Ireland. And this guy called Jeff Puritt, who was the CEO of Telus International, flew in, and we met, had dinner, and we took him to some of them, some of the late night pubs in Cork, and we immediately gelled. Right, we liked each other.
You
we
got him
each other.
drunk, Dan, is what happened. You got him drunk.
That always works too, by the way.
You don't have to handcuff him, though.
It's difficult to get him drunk because he can hold his drink. But so we immediately clicked with them, and then we kept in contact afterwards. And I think that was the key to the sale, right?
He kept on sniffing. Yeah.
We met his wife, we met his family. We as a couple, we found out what his core values were, what he stood for as a person, what he stood for as a businessman, and that was critical for us when we made the decision that we were going to get married to T.I. in effect, really. And so we knew him very well. I knew what I was buying. He knew what he was buying. We got along, and I knew we'd get along afterwards. So that was the the
clincher.
Yeah.
And Linda, yeah, go for it, Dan.
I don't think we could have sold the business to anyone else but T.I. because it was our baby, and like we wouldn't have given away our baby to a big corporate company with a corporate structure. So it was important that we found the right partner to get married to.
So Linda, can I ask you then? Obviously, you did a sort of a values analysis of TI. At that stage, obviously, you've a very clear idea of your own values as an organization, and there must have been alignment there. So what are those values?
It's all about keeping the team and the teams that we built out. I mean, you couldn't do this for as long as we did for money, Sonya. It's just so head-wrecking, and it's a people industry, so there's always a daily problem. If not problem.
So if you were to distill it into values, then you're talking about respect, inclusive leadership, communication.
You can't work as hard as that for that length of time, and take such extraordinary chances, and it affected all of us. We were absolutely shattered. I often look back and wonder how we did it at all.
But you did do it.
Yeah,
you did do it.
And I have to say for EY, that the promotion that we got through them in being in their finalists in 2013 was a huge marketing profile as well, because we didn't win the international category, but we got an awful lot of promotion.
Yeah.
And you can never get enough, as you know. So
and is it fair to say that it's not just the promotion that creates value out of the program?
It's the alumni. I remember, when we had the sale meeting, Frank O'Neill, tax expert from Cork, and I had 10 questions, and he said, I'm not going to answer any of them, Linda, because you've spent your finger in the dike for the last nearly 30 years. So I won't talk to you for 2 years. And he was right.
Amazing.
Actually, because I was more threatened by the result than fighting.
You were suffering post-traumatic at that stage, yeah.
Yeah.
So Dan, let's talk about the first major phase of investment that Telus came into VoxPro with. How did that happen, and what was the kind of you'd already built the relationship, as you said yourself, this person was feeling you out. So when that initial investment round was sealed, how did that feel?
Bizarre, actually. It was, firstly, we closed the deal on the 16th of August 2017, which was my birthday, and you couldn't make that up. So if there is going to be a book, that's going to be a chapter. We literally spent the morning in Dublin signing papers in William Fry's, and then we came to Cork and partied in Jack's restaurant till all hours of the morning. My birthday.
Fantastic.
So I was just thinking to myself, how am I going to top this next year? I mean, it was going to be a major letdown, but it was an interesting kind of. I wish I had reached out to the alumni in in EY, and talk to people who'd been through the journey before, because it's once you achieve it, it's then you find yourself, I mean, you've given away your baby in effect for I will, albeit for a lot of money, but at the
And it
same
was
time,
a lot of money, right? So that first round,
uh,
which is, I think it's in the public domain, isn't it? Was 55 million, was it?
yeah, in and around that number. Excuse me. So, but it is quite a different experience to going from being an entrepreneur, charting your own destiny. I became overnight part of a global leadership team of $1 billion company, and that's quite the transition. So I wish I had reached out to people, because there's been so many people on the EY alumni that have been on that journey before, that I could have helped in a major way. And I would urge anyone, by the way, who's going on that journey, to talk to someone like me, or others in the community that have been through that process, because it's a massive change to go from one thing into another. So I have to say, I found that quite challenging for the first 3 months, until I figured out how things worked, and that I was part of a
Dan,
team.
what do you wish you knew going into that?
Um,
Politics, probably.
yeah, I learned how to play them. I wish that, look, that, for instance, I mean, it comes down to numbers, no matter how deep the relationships are. So the first month, because we've been so busy focusing on trying to close the deal, our numbers tanked in the month of August, and then that created an avalanche of, like, I mean, of control, and people from the mothership kind of becoming more involved in the business, and rightly so. I mean, they paid a lot of money for an asset, and the first month the numbers kind of dipped. So I learned then that, okay, you
First
have to
year.
hit your, is the key thing. You must hit your numbers if you want to be in control of your own destiny. Hit your numbers, and that's the number one thing. And once we hit our numbers, everything was fine.
And it's a really tricky one, because I think regardless of the size of your company, and regardless of the size of the investment,
Same
that closing around, it's another whole job. So it's very
Totally.
difficult to keep things moving at that point.
Well,
But
exactly.
but the story doesn't end there, because that was the first half of a buyout.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened next.
So look, I remember actually Linda and I sitting down and with a friend of ours who's a serial entrepreneur. He said, "You got to look at this, and the money you've got now for the 55% you've just sold, as being your final check, and that's the only way to think about it." He said, "You just got to look at it that way, and assume you're not going to get any more." So I'm hugely competitive by nature. So I was okay. I was not going to let that happen, and I met the former CMO of Microsoft, a lady called Mitch Burke, out in San Francisco, through friends. And I told her my story, and she turned around and said to me, "If you leave $1 on the table of the rest of the money that you can earn, I'm going to come and get you." So I was okay. So I took that literally, and I said, "Okay, I have 2.5 years to maximize this opportunity, not just for me and Linda, but for the team of people that had helped us build a business." And that was really important to me. That not only would Linda and I make more money, but our friends in the business would do well. And that was the thing that spurred me on to do it. And so
Rise all
it was
boats.
right. Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So Linda, that 2 years then, I can only imagine that it was about highly accelerated growth.
Oh, for sure. And obviously, the first year we tanked. So those, I said before, contracts take 2 to 3 years easily. So the next year, they all kind of came in the first quarter, if not second, definitely no longer. And we were on a good run rate for the following year, and they took us out the 15th of December. Last Christmas. Lucky us.
What a Christmas present, Dan, huh?
Well, you know what? I cannot believe. I mean, I think we're the luckiest couple in Ireland, because like we weren't due to sell the remaining 45% until the end of 2020. And I promise you, based on what has happened in the pandemic and what's going on in the economy now, the size of the check we'd have taken out this year in 2020 would have been a fraction of what we made in December, for sure. So, like, serendipity played a big part in it. They approached us in October and said, "Are you interested in an accelerated earner?" And I said, "This is a bit left field," because our numbers were on track. And so basically, I said, "What's motivating it?" And they said, "Look, where the last 6 to 12 months are always very fractious in an earner situation, and let's leave while we're in love." We're kind of on part that way.
That's amazing.
So I said, "Okay." So I sat down with Linda and I said, "Okay, they're interested in buying us out early." I said, "What number would you take?" And I said, "Write it down," and she wrote it down, and I wrote it down. We went back and I said, "Yeah, if we're interested, if you meet us somewhere between what the company's worth now and what it's potentially worth in 2020, we'd love to talk." And then they said, "We're prepared to offer you X." And it was 4 million more than when both of us had written down. First time we've ever agreed on anything, by the way. So the number was the same. So we ended up, we executed the deal on the 15th of December. And who would have predicted the pandemic? And I mean, it's just like, I just feel so incredibly grateful that we managed to get out on the 15th of December, pretty much weeks before the pandemic started.
So the best Christmas present ever was basically a double down on the initial investment.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary. So in around the 100 million mark for a baby that you had built with 6 people over a pub.
Well, it's just been just the most incredible journey. And someone had said we were starting with that was going to be the end result. I would have laughed, but here we are, and I'm still
an inspiration.
I wouldn't say that, but I've remained on as a strategic advisor to the CEO of TI, but that's very much a part-time role, and which I'm enjoying very much. And but it gives me the freedom to be able to do Linda and I do many other things as well, which is wonderful.
And you have become very active investors in other, particularly Irish businesses. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is that important to you that your portfolio is based out of Ireland?
Give where you live, honey.
Excellent. I love it. So your span of interests are from vintage fashion, which doesn't surprise me, remote working, which doesn't surprise me, and technology for content. Am I right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about those businesses.
So the Open for Vintage is one of them, an amazing founder called Colin Saunders. I was just talking to him a week ago, and he's had the best month of he's ever had in May, in terms of, like, he's online. He's captured that sustainability piece in terms of high-end fashion. So there's a great appetite out there now for people to buy, to buy sustainable couture. And so he's selling watches, bags, vintage watches and bags online, and from stores all over the world, from Paris to Tokyo. And I think his pivotal point was when Kim Kardashian bought a red Versace dress from his website, and that's been
That'd do it all right.
Yeah,
So Dan, I have to ask, how did it come into being that Kim Kardashian bought or wore off Open for Vintage? Well, did you gift it to her? How did it happen?
No, I mean, one of her stylists, I assume that she's got many of them, have contacted Open for Vintage and said she was interested in a red leather Versace 1980s mini red leather, and but she insisted on paying for it, because in no way did she want to endorse the Open for Vintage site. So she did wear the dress to an event. I think it was
the mini
in October in LA, but there was nothing to stop the founder Colin Saunders posting it on his Instagram, because of course his feed wouldn't come in contact with hers. So, but it was a game changer for her to have bought that.
And can I ask you then, was that garment live on the site, or did Open for Vintage source it for her?
It was live on the site.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was
So the
11
Kim
grand,
K
but
effect,
Yeah.
keep
11
your
grand.
11 grand, yeah. So,
Nice sale on top of everything else.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Not a bother.
Very good.
Petty
Excellent.
cash, darling.
to her anyway. So there's that, and another one I think that I'm going to become more operationally involved in is a company called Video Rank Me, and so basically I believe that is going to change how we use the internet forever. It will eliminate the need for websites, and because it's all about video now. So in the States, Linda and I spent 3 to 4 months in LA just after from December onwards, and the trend out there right now is that people are searching on YouTube, not on Google search anymore, because so videos are really where it's all about. So this company that we're involved,
It's a big area of interest for me, actually, Dan. So we'll talk later.
Yeah,
We're doing a huge amount of research in that area. So yeah, no, it's fascinating.
but this company's got technology and and AI that will bring your company and your video to the top of Google search and YouTube search. So I think that's going to be a game changer and has a chance to go global. And we will be setting up operations over in LA very shortly around that particular business. But I'd love to chat to you offline, Sonia.
Yeah. And so the other piece is remote working. And you, of all people, with your enormous workforce and your experience through COVID, must have so much knowledge about, I suppose, the future of work now and what that looks like, Linda. How do you see things changing?
I think, it's never going to be quite the same. People have learned about work-life balance a bit more as well, which is very important.
Yeah.
And the commuting, for say 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours home is extraordinary for people to manage onto their working day. So I think that it's a whole new era, and we're just going to have to embrace and make it better for everybody.
Yeah.
Just to give context.
Yeah.
Just VoxPro alone globally, right? Or sorry, TI globally, or have set a target that post-pandemic, that only 57% of the workforce will come back to an office environment. The other 47 or 43% will permanently work from home. That's just TI now. So I think that trend is going to be right across the globe. That remote working is now the new norm for sure.
And what do you think is going to happen with commercial spaces? Because there's a lot of mausoleums now that have been created that are no longer going to be inhabited. What do you think the future is there?
Well, I think, Sonia, they never cut any slack with anybody, ever. And it's been the landlord's way all the time. So,
can they be repurposed for housing?
They can. But take a situation of anybody, say, moving to Dublin, like you're paying premium cost for a room that you'd be paying for a mortgage in any other part of the country.
Yeah.
So,
I spoke to an entrepreneur yesterday, and he was telling me that this is a kind of a nuclear option for his company. He's paying currently 33,000 a month for premium office space and plus rates, and he said that he was able to kind of very successfully adapt his business to remote working, and it makes sense for him to liquidate his company and start all over again, rather than because he's got a 5-year lease, and if he did that, he's going to save close to 2.5 million.
That's unbelievable.
No.
Dan and Linda, I feel like we're in the living room having a glass of wine now at this stage, and I could talk to you all day long.
If you were.
Your story is extraordinary, and genuinely, I wish you the very best.
Thank you very much, Sonia.
You are absolutely arch EY Entrepreneur of the Year alumni in what you've done, and enjoy every minute of it.
Thank you, and we'll make that glass of wine happen soon.
We will indeed, and it was a pleasure.
Done.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks Thanks for listening and watching Architects of Business, made in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year. Thanks to the team here at JOE, and of course to today's entrepreneurs, Dan and Linda Kiely. If you haven't already done so, click subscribe to get new shows directly into your feed.